All right, if you would turn to 1 Samuel chapter 25. We're still in our series titled Israel Wants a King. Tonight we're not going to see very much about Saul at all. This is mostly on David. Well, it's all on David. Last time, if you remember, Saul and his army, they caught up with David in the mountains. David and his men were hiding in a cave. They had an opportunity to kill Saul and stop all the madness that was going on. But the Lord spared Saul, and he used David to do it. David's men asked him why he didn't avenge himself by killing Saul, but he said it wasn't him. He wasn't the one to do it. It wasn't the Lord's will. And he and Saul, it sounds like kind of sort of made up. Anyway, for a short time anyway. They left in peace, and Saul went back home, as far as we know. David went on, not really on the run, but he's got 600 men with him. They're traveling, and tonight we'll see what happens. 1 Samuel chapter 25 and verse 1, we see Samuel the prophet dies. The prophet Samuel is a very old man. He was an old man when we started this lesson. When Saul became king, when he anointed Saul to be king, he was an old man then. And remember, his sons had been a problem. They had been chosen as judges over the land, and didn't do a very good job, and were removed. Samuel seems to have been well favored in the land of Israel during that time. A lot of people looked up to him. He was not the high priest, of course, but he was a prophet. He was one of the judges, and he was the one that the Lord chose to anoint their first king, and he also anointed the second king, David, when it came time. But Samuel dies, and he says, "And Samuel died, and all the Israelites were gathered together and lamented him, and buried him in his house at Ramah. And David arose and went down to the wilderness of Paran." So after the burial of Samuel, David leaves again, goes down to the wilderness of Paran, and comes across a man in Carmel. Carmel is a very popular, one of the popular places in the Scriptures. And there was a man in Moab whose possessions were in Carmel. In other words, his business, his house, whatever you want to call it, all his possessions were in Carmel. But he was in Moab, and from what I'm understanding, Moab was not too far from Carmel. This was would have been in the land of Judah, where the tribe of Judah was. And the man was very great, and he had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he was shearing his sheep in Carmel, getting ready to send the wool to market, more than likely. Now the name of the man was Nabal. Now, according to John Gill, Nabal means foolish, fool or foolish. Why? I think I would have changed my name if that's what it meant. But obviously this man seemed proud of it, I guess. I don't know. But we'll see here in a moment why why this name was fitting for him. Now the man the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife, Abigail. Now, Abigail, there's another name we know from the Bible, and we'll see why before we get to the end of this chapter. And she was a woman of good understanding. In other words, she was educated, had some common sense about her, and of a beautiful countenance. So she was a very beautiful woman. But the man was churlish and evil in his doings, and he was of the house of Caleb. Now, you kind of wonder, well, why does he mention the house of Caleb, him being from the house of Caleb here, if he was an evil person? Because Caleb was a good man, remember? A godly man. Well, I think it's because he's showing the contrast here between the two. You know, he comes from a good godly line, but this man was not a godly man. He was a wicked man. And so he was not like his forefathers. And David heard in the wilderness that Nabal did shear his sheep, and David sent out 10 young men. And David said unto the young men, Get you up to Carmel, and go to Nabal, and greet him in my name. And thus shall ye say to him that liveth in prosperity. He's wealthy, so you be good to this man. You be polite to this man, and maybe he'll help us. Peace be both to thee, and peace be to thine house, and peace be unto all that thou hast. And now I have heard that thou hast shearers. Now thy shepherds, which were with us, we hurt them not, neither was there aught missing unto them all the while they were in Carmel. So David wants Nabal to understand, even though he's got a large army with him, he's got 600 men with him, they have come upon these shepherds out in the fields with their sheep, with Nabal's sheep, and he wants him to know, we've not hurt anybody. We're not here to fight. We're just passing through. In other words, we're not here to fight. We're not seeking any harm to anyone. We've not hurt the shepherds. We've not hurt the sheep. We've not taken anything from them at all. And he says, Ask thy young men, and they will show thee. In other words, he's telling Nabal, your very men will be a witness to that. Wherefore, let the young men find favor in thine eyes, for we come in a good day. Give, I pray thee, whatsoever cometh in thine hand unto thy servants and to thy son David. So David is asking, maybe for food at this point. You know, they're traveling. They probably don't have much food left. He's asking Nabal, whatever you can spare. He doesn't tell him to go out of his way. He doesn't demand, either give it to us or we'll kill you. It's nothing like that. He says, I pray thee. In other words, I'm asking. Please help us. Whatsoever cometh in thine hand unto thy servants. In other words, what you would normally give, the portions that you would normally give your servants, give us the same. That's all we ask. And he says to thy son David. In other words, David is humbling himself before this man. And when David's young men came, they spake to Nabal according to all those words in the name of David, and ceased. And Nabal answered David's servants and said, Who is David? And who is the son of Jesse? Now wait a minute. Remember, David is the one that killed Goliath. And you remember what happened right after he killed Goliath? He became very popular all over the land. And if this man Nabal is a wealthy man, says he was very great, you think he would have heard the news, don't you? And he should have known who David was, but some time has passed since then. I don't know how long. It doesn't tell us. It could have been a couple of years. Maybe the stories of David have calmed down some, and maybe people have forgotten. You know, that happens. Maybe Nabal's just one of those guys that never watched the news. You know, there's people out there like that They don't care what's going on in the rest of the world or even what's going on next door. Just leave me alone. That's their attitude. And that may be, with him being a wicked man, that very well could have been his case. He could have been one of those men that just don't bother me and I won't bother you type of thing. And anyway, he wants to know, who is David? Who is the son of Jesse? There be many servants nowadays that break away every man from his master. How do I know who he is? Can he prove it? Where's his ID? Where's his driver's license? Can you tell me? Has he got any proof of who he says he is? So even if he did know who David was and who the son of Jesse was, he's never seen him. He has no proof. Shall I then take my bread and my water and my flesh that I have killed for my shearers and give unto men whom I know not whence they be? How do I know these men are trustworthy? Who are they? And how do I know they're not here to kill us all? To do evil? So David's young men turned their way and went again and came and told him all those sayings. And David said unto his men, gird ye on every man his sword. David's ready to fight. He's mad. How dare he accuse us of this? How dare he not trust us? Everybody knows who David is. I killed Goliath. I'm the most famous man in the kingdom. A little bit of his pride got to him here. And David said unto his men, girded ye on every man his sword. And they girded on every man his sword, and David also girded on his sword, and there went up after David about 400 men, and 200 abode by the stuff. So he takes 400, he splits his force. 400 men goes with him, and 200 stay behind to guard their camp. But one of the young men told Abigail, this would have been one of Nabal's servants, told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to salute our master, and he railed on him. Our master didn't treat him good. He didn't beat him or nothing, but he didn't talk good to him. He railed on him. That's a saying we use today, isn't it? If you want to talk bad about somebody, and not just on them to somebody else, but to somebody that it's going to get back to them, or you do it to their face, whichever. But the men were very good unto us, and we were not hurt, neither missed we anything, as long as we were conversant with them when we were in the fields. They weren't here to hurt nobody. Our master did them wrong. His servant sees that. They were a wall unto us, both by night and day, all the while we were with him keeping the sheep. They protected us, in other words. They were a wall of defense around us. They protected us while they were with us. Now therefore know and consider what thou wilt do. For evil is determined against our master and against all his household, for he is such a son of Belial that a man cannot speak to him. Who's Belial? The devil. His own servant calls him the son of the devil. He asks his wife, what can you do for us? What can you do to help us? Because David and his men are ready to come and kill all of us. They're mad now. Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves and 2 bottles of wine. Now 2 bottles of wine doesn't sound like enough to feed 600 men, does it? 200 loaves, well, it depends on how big the loaves are, I guess. And 5 sheep, ready dressed. In other words, they were already killed and they were dressed out, ready to cook. And 5 measures of parched corn, and 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on asses. They're going to have a feast when she gets there. And she said unto her servants, go on before me. Behold, I come after you. But she told not her husband Nabal. well, we think, well, that's not really right. She should have said something to her husband, but she knew him better than anybody else. Him being an evil man, he may have beat her or whatever. She had a reason for not going to him. Probably because one thing, she probably knew that he wouldn't do it anyway. There was no point. And it was so, as she rode on the asses, that she came down by the covert of the hill, and behold, David and his men came down against her, and she met them. Now David had said, surely in vain have I kept all this fellow hath in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that pertained unto him, and he hath requited me evil for good. So David's explaining to her, we've not done anything wrong. We've protected his stuff, his possessions that are out in the wilderness, his sheep and his shepherds, and he's accused us of evil when we've done good. So, and more also do God unto the enemies of David. So they're going out in the name of God to the man they consider their enemy. That's who David is talking about. If I leave all that pertain to him by the morning light, any that pisseth against the wall. In other words, he's calling them dogs. That's what that term means. They're acting like dogs. If I leave them, he says, if I leave all that pertain to him, if I don't do anything, by the morning, they're no better than dogs. And when Abigail saw David, she hasted and lighted off the ass and fell before David on her face and bowed herself to the ground and fell at his feet and said, Upon me, my Lord, upon me let this iniquity be, and let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak in thy audience and hear the words of thine handmaid. Let not, my Lord, I pray thee, regard this man of Belial, even Nabal. Even she calls him the son of the devil. That's how wicked this man was. He was not good to his wife either, not just his servants, but to his wife. For as his name is, so is he. Now remember what I said about his name earlier? Foolish one or fool? She says, as his name is, so is he. He's true to his name, in other words. He's a fool. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. He's not very wise. But I, thine handmaid, saw not the young men of my Lord, whom thou didst send. Now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, seeing the Lord hath withholden thee from coming to shed blood, from avenging thyself with thine hand, now let thine enemies, and they that seek evil to my Lord, be as Nabal. And now this blessing which thine handmaid hath brought unto my Lord, let it even be given unto the young men that follow my Lord. So she's pleading her case here. She's like, don't go up against Nabal. Don't kill him. And she says, I pray thee, forgive the trespass of thine handmaiden, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house, because my Lord fighteth the battles of the Lord, and evil has not been found in thee all thy days. You've been a good man, David, an honorable man, and he's known for that all throughout the land. She knew about him. She's telling him, don't worry about Nabal. Don't go fight out of anger. Yet a man is risen to pursue thee. He's talking about Saul. Well, she doesn't even mention his name, but we know who the man is that's been pursuing him, don't we? That's what we've been reading about. And to seek thy soul, but the soul of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of life with the Lord thy God, and the souls of thine enemies, them shall he sling out as out of the middle of a sling. So she says, God will take care of them. You don't worry about your enemies. The Lord will take care of them. And it shall come to pass when the Lord shall have done to my Lord according to all the good that he hath spoken concerning thee, and shall have appointed thee ruler over Israel. She knows the prophecy, doesn't she? She knows that David is eventually going to be king. How does she know that? Well, one, either the Lord had shown her this, or she's heard from Samuel. I think he was the only other one that would have known at this time. Remember Saul in the last chapter where we read where Saul even admitted he knew David was going to be the next king, and he begged him not to kill his family when he come to power. So it may have been well known all over the kingdom that once Saul was gone, David was the next in line. That this shall be no grief unto thee, nor offense of heart unto my Lord, either that thou hast shed blood careless, or that my Lord hath avenged himself. But when the Lord shall have dwelt well with my Lord, then remember thine handmaid. So don't do this. If you do this, it's going to be on your conscience. That's what we would say today. You know, don't kill Nabal and all his servants out of vengeance. The Lord will take care of them. He'll take care of Nabal. You keep following the Lord, and the Lord will bless you. And David said to Abigail, Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, which sent thee this day to meet me. David comes to his senses, doesn't he? He listens to her. And he lets her know that it was the Lord that sent her to him that day and stopped him. Because if she hadn't have shown up, if the Lord hadn't have sent her, he was going to go out and do something evil. And blessed be thy advice, and blessed be thou, which hast kept me this day from coming to shed blood, and from avenging myself with mine own hand. For in every deed, in very deed, as the Lord God of Israel liveth, which hath kept me back from hurting thee, except thou hast hasted and come to meet me, surely there had not been left unto Nabal by the morning light any that pisseth against the wall. In other words, he would have killed all of everything he owned. Remember, that was the custom of the day. You went into battle against somebody, you killed everything. Remember what Saul did to Amalek the priest? Killed his whole family, all his animals, all the family's animals, everything. That was kind of the custom of the day. When you fought somebody, you wiped them out. And that's what David was prepared to do here with Nabal, and with Nabal's wife coming by herself, riding a donkey, comes to David's camp. He could have very easily taken her hostage and drew Nabal out. Or, even worse, he could have just put her to death. He could have just killed her right there. And David realizes that the Lord stopped him, and he sent her with the word of the Lord to be wise in his decisions. So David had received of her hand that which she had brought him, and said unto her, Go up in peace to thine house. See, I have hearkened to thy voice, and have accepted thy person. I'm going to listen to you. I'm not going to do what I plan to do. We're not going to go fight today. And Abigail came to Nabal, and behold, he held a feast in his house, like the feast of a king. Well, it was shearing time for the sheep. He's got money now. And that was another, you see that often. You read history, or you read, even in the Bible, we see where a man would sell either the wool from the sheep, or he would sell some sheep or some goats or cattle or something when the time of year came. We see it to a point. You see it today. You see it in the history of our country. You think of the cattlemen out west. years ago, and they'll throw a big party whenever it came time to when they got their money for selling their cattle after the cattle drive was over with. It's kind of the same thing here. Nabal is sheared his sheep and sold what he had, and he's got money now, so he throws a big feast. He's like a king. And Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunken. Wherefore she told him nothing, less or more, until the morning light. So she kept this thing from her, this meeting she had with David, from Nabal, her husband. He's drunk. They've had a big feast. They've had lots of wine. He's drunk and he's happy. You know how he was a happy drunk, looks like, not a mean drunk. So she doesn't tell him anything. But it came to pass in the morning, when the wine was gone out of Nabal, and his wife had told him these things, that his heart died within him, and he became as a stone. He sobered up the next morning. She tells him, and his heart died within him. In other words, it depressed him. He sunk into a deep depression over this matter, and became as a stone. In other words, he just sat around with no emotions. And it came to pass about 10 days after that the Lord smote Nabal, that he died. How did the Lord smite him? We don't know. Doesn't tell us. But the Lord smote him. Whether he drank himself to death, we don't know, or he just grieved himself to death over what she's done. And when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, Blessed be the Lord, that thou pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal, and hath kept his servant from evil. For the Lord hath returned the wickedness of Nabal upon his own head. And David sent and communed with Abigail to take her to him to wife. Now, Nabal, or David, kind of has a little celebration here. Not a party or anything, but just within himself celebrates the death of Nabal. His enemy has been taken care of by the Lord. He didn't do it himself. The Lord kept him from doing evil himself. The Lord took Nabal. He's dead. And what does he do? He sends for Abigail, Nabal's wife, or his widow, and takes her as his wife. Well, wait a minute. David's already got a wife, doesn't he? Remember Michal, Saul's daughter? He left her before he went on. Remember when the last time he saw her has been a few chapters back. He's been on the run for a while. There's no indication that he's been back home to see her. And when the servants of David were come to Abigail to Carmel, they spake unto her, saying, David sent us unto thee to take thee to him to wife. And she rose and bowed herself on her face to the earth, and said, Behold, let thy handmaid be a servant to wash the feet of the servants of the Lord, of my Lord. And Abigail hasted and arose and rode upon an ass with 5 damsels of hers that went after her, and she went after the messengers of David and became his wife. So she agreed to it. She became his wife. Now watch the hell what happens next. In the next verse, David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel, and they were also both of them his wives. So I don't know which one was first. It doesn't tell us. If you go in order by this, it appears Abigail was, but then he marries this other woman. Now, he hasn't been to Jezreel in some time, so maybe he had married her before when he was there. I don't know. It doesn't really tell us. But he's got these 2 wives now, plus he's got Michal back at home. Or does he? Read the last verse of this chapter. But Saul had given Michal his daughter, David's wife, to Phalti, the son of Laish, which was of Gallim. So out of spite, Saul had broke their marriage. He took his daughter. Now, remember, he's king. Now, I don't know if he performed a divorce. Doesn't tell us. But anyway, it was a legal move. He took his wife, he took Michal, he gave her to another man for a wife while David was away. So, again, either Saul and Michal, it's very possible if they followed the law, she could have claimed that he abandoned her and filed for a divorce, which would have been legal in their day. And did David know this? It appears so. He met with Saul. He's met with Jonathan since he left Michal, so it's very possible one of them could have told him about what happened. But we see him marry 2 other women. Why? Well, that seems to be a problem with the Lord's men in the Old Testament. For whatever reason, they couldn't be satisfied with just one wife. Not all of them, but David, here he is, the up-and-coming king, and Abigail has just given him a speech on keeping his nose clean, until he gets to be king. And he goes out and marries 2 women. I don't understand all that. I don't understand why. We know later he winds up marrying Bathsheba after he gets her pregnant and he kills her husband. He marries her, but he's still a man after God's own heart. You look at these things and you wonder how, but at the same time, if you study David deeply, that's where you see how the Lord could say what he did, that he was a man after his own heart. So we're going to stop there for tonight. We'll see more about Saul next time. We're going to stop this study with the death of Saul. So we've only got a few more weeks and we'll be done. Anyway, that's all.